Claire Curran.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Just taking another call on in the committee stage of this bill, I'd first of all like to thank the Minister for his words and for the signals that he's given for the next piece of work that needs to be done. From this side of the House, we would express eagerness for those discussions to start being held and for there to be as much community involvement in those as possible. I'm certainly aware of some pieces of work being done around the country into various scenarios. One of those is a piece of work being done into a major alpine event down in the southern part of the Southern Alps, and the impact of that, which is something that we have to bear in mind. And another issue, of course, is the impact of a tsunami on New Zealand following a major earthquake event somewhere else. And I do want to actually put on record here in the House tonight that we've got some real concerns about the ability of New Zealand to New Zealand coastal communities to be able to respond to such an event. And I think we had an instance of this at the beginning of September where there was a definite delay in the time period before there was actually an alert provided to the community, and the manner in which that alert was provided was called into question. And in 2016, it's time that we grappled with the fact that we need a national alerting system, and that there are means to do that. This government seems to have been going round in circles on that. Perhaps the subject of another debate could be, but there has been a considerable amount of money spent on looking into various models, but we still don't seem to be any further ahead. And I'm just alerting the House that that is something that we really shouldn't be sitting on our hands about. I'd also like to make some comments about the absolute importance of this legislation, and with direct reference to a medium-sized event, could have been described as a small to medium-sized event in Dunedin last year with the 2015 floods in South Dunedin. Certainly for the people that were affected, it was a major event, and the response from Civil Defence to that was dire, and in fact it was better described as a non-response, where Civil Defence personnel that night were not even aware that there was an issue in South Dunedin and actually had gone home to bed and weren't even looking at South Dunedin. And to this day, we still do not know just how many homes and businesses were affected by sewage-laden water during that night, and from people, elderly people with dementia in rest homes who were left, had to be moved into the middle of the rest home or moved out of the rest home in a rather chaotic manner, to elderly people with water up round their thighs who got back into bed because they didn't know what else to do, to families with small children who were left feeling quite desperate and had to move out of their homes for months and battle with insurance companies on their own. Those issues, I guess the point of what I want to make tonight is that is a plea, really, that through what this legislation is part of, through a legislative review, that we address the civil defence organisations around the country that really just aren't up to scratch, and that where they're operating as fiefdoms with Dad's Army type organisations behind them. I know that that is changing, but there are still the remnants of those. In my part of the country, that has been improved, Mr. Chair.
Claire Curran, last call.
There has been some changes made, but it's taken nearly a year and a half for that to happen, and I look forward to ensuring that that isn't replicated anywhere else in the country, and that anyone else has to go through that kind of situation. Just finally, I want to make a few comments about the permanent legislative authority, which I'll echo the comments from the Green member about that as being a sensible mechanism, and also from Ruth Dyson. We did think when we read the first reading of this bill that we were going to have a bit of an argument about that, and that this all looked a bit unusual. And I think we all learnt something in the Select Committee about a measure and a mechanism that is actually being used, that it's being used for other things, and it is actually quite sensible. It is used as a way of funding New Zealand's contributions to international forums such as the IMF and the OECD, payments of tax credits, search and rescue costs, and that's just a few of the different kinds of examples. And we certainly did receive sound advice from the Treasury analyst, who helpfully appeared before the committee, reassured us that the permanent legislative authority was a flexible mechanism for reimbursement of expenses during an emergency and providing ongoing authority for such expenditure. So we think that, and we were comfortable, there hasn't been any debate on that throughout this discussion on this bill, that there were any real concerns about that. I think ultimately we do have a reasonable piece of legislation, a pretty good piece of legislation, which has been helped with good cooperative relations across the committee and good advice from officials. I thank the government for their support for the supplementary order paper on the table tonight, and I look forward to the next discussion that happens around the bigger picture and how we deal with major events in New Zealand. Thank you.